Hello, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome into Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. You know, it's been said you don't know what you have until it's gone, and I certainly found that out last week. For the first time, probably in the history of this show, I was not able to, not the first time, but among the rare instances, I was not able to host this show. As you know, been dealing with a little bit of a voice thing. It is now at least better enough that I can do the show, and I'm happy to be back here again, making our picks against the spread with the entire Dog Nation team, at least a lot of us anyway. Mike, Jeff, Connor, Kaylee, and me. Of course, our guy, Dari Payro from RS Andrews. In one of those weeks, and this is classic college football, doesn't seem like it's the deepest slate. There are only two games pitting ranked opponents against each other. But oftentimes in college football, this is when the crazy stuff seems to happen. And from a point spread perspective, crazy stuff gives us lots of opportunities for fun. So before we update on where things stand and jump into this week's picks, Dari, as I've said to you off the air, I'll now say to you on the air, I missed you last week. It's great to be here with you again today and the rest of our Dog Nation colleagues. Looking forward to making some picks with you here today.
Oh yeah, I need another like 5 in 1 week here. I'm feeling it. I like this slate this week. It's a lot easier to pick.
Wanting to ride the hot hand indeed. And speaking of that, let's go back and look at how things have happened. Winning week for me last week at 4-2 puts me at 13-11 on the season. That ties me with Kaylee Manziel at the top of the standings here right now. And as Dari said, fresh off a 5-1 week, also 3-3 last week, putting him at 12-12 right now. That keeps him just a game back of the leaders, tied with Jeff Sintel. Connor Riley, same numbers there on that. Rough week for Mike last week, but we'll call that as they say in the market, a pre-rally decline on his way for improvement here going forward. And frankly, anybody's race here as the collective panel looking to get hot with a lot of action set to come. And as Dari said, one of these swing weeks where maybe a chance for somebody to make up some real ground here. We'll see how that indeed does play out. We'll start, as we always do, with the Georgia Bulldogs. You know the story for them. Disappointing loss last week against Alabama. The autopsy has been ongoing with exactly how all of that went down. Interesting number as our folks have put together 10-6 after a loss under Kirby Smart. That's against the spread. Kentucky's 2-2 for the season, but let's face it, also viewed to be among the very worst teams in the SEC. Just 1-3 against the spread here this year. Good numbers coming from our folks, and the number we're going with for this particular game as Georgia hosts Kentucky is a number of 20.5. Georgia, big favorite against a team that it has had its struggles with in the past, at least from a point spread perspective. So, Mike, we come to you. Georgia hosts Kentucky. It's an early noon start. Not the same atmosphere this week as you had a week ago with Alabama coming in. Georgia trying to cover the big number. What do you think about it?
It's kind of like the roulette wheel, right? I pick them every week and they lose, and you keep thinking, boy, sooner or later it's got to come up red. And with all the attention paid to the slow starts, I'll stick with Georgia. Sooner or later they got to win one of these, Brandon. I know that's a big number for Kirby Smart to cover these days, even against Kentucky. But I'm gonna ride that. I got to think that eventually things balance out. I'm gonna bet on Kirby Smart and to get it right and get a fast start against the Wildcats team coached by Mark Stoops.
Mike hopping back on the horse there when it comes to the Georgia Bulldogs, much to the delight of many of the UGA fans, no doubt, listening to us here right now. And by the way, if you are listening and watching, how much do you enjoy having this show dropping a little earlier in the week? That seems to have been a huge success. People, I think, like having this to make their early decisions on how they may want to go. Sometimes it may just be fading us, but either way, people seem to enjoy the show dropping a little earlier in the week, which I think is great news. Jeff Sintel, we had a little bit of internet with stuff for you before the show began, but I believe we have you settled in, nestled into our control room. That's where you'll make your pick. What do you think about Georgia favored by 20.5?
Guys, I was positive that Mike was going to go against the Dogs this week because that makes Connor's pick so much easier. Comes down to this. South Carolina beat Kentucky pretty handily last week. There's not probably one player on the Kentucky roster anymore that Georgia either could have had or didn't want. Then you also think about this. I know you spread aficionados like to a little digging. 5 out of the last 6 times Georgia and Kentucky have played in Athens, Georgia has beaten the Wildcats by that number. I think Georgia goes heavy dose ground game, 200-plus yards rushing. I think they cover this one as well. And Connor, we could probably just get a rubber stamp out for your next pick.
So laying lumber here with our scribes to get things going. Oftentimes, as Jeff said, Connor does zig when they zag. Is that going to be true again for you this time?
I actually came in ready to pick Georgia just thinking that they were due. But since Mike and Jeff feel so certain that this game is going Georgia's way, I'm just going to take Kentucky here. Jeff mentions, Georgia's going to want to run the ball, get in and out. That's going to shorten the game. That's going to decrease the chances for cheap touchdowns late. Kentucky's going to want to run the ball too. I think that this is a game where the under hits, and I think that this is a game that Kentucky plays within 20.5 points.
So Connor Raleigh does do as Jeff predicted, which now puts the ball in Kaylee Manziel's court. Kaylee, you got some split decision here. Which side do you want to come down on?
I think that Georgia needs a blowout in this game, but 20.5 points, even at home, just feels like a lot for an SEC opponent. I went back and watched some of the Ole Miss Kentucky game, and I think maybe they do have some unproven receivers. It's not going to be enough to get it done against the Dogs, but 20.5 is just too much for me to take, so I'm going to take Kentucky.
Kaylee, can I tell you this, and I mean this as sincerely as I possibly can. I think you've elevated this show so much in the couple of years you've been on, because in almost any other broadcast situation we find you in, you're laughing, you're smiling, you're joking, you're cutting up. I love how serious you take your picks. Can I just say that? Because I think that's exactly I think that's the vibe the show needs. I do, and I mean this as sincerely as possible. I love the very business-like approach you take to your picks. I really appreciate that.
Well, if it involves competition, then I do happen to take it a little bit more seriously. And I got to produce the show for you guys my first year at Dog Nation, and all I ever wanted to do was be a part of it. So the fact that you guys allow me to, I'm going to give it my all. So I appreciate you saying that.
100%. All right. So in my case, I'm also taking Kentucky here. Let me give you a couple of interesting notes. As has been mentioned before by me, Georgia has really struggled against Kentucky in recent years, just 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 versus the Wildcats. And as Connor mentioned, it's a tale of two teams that like to play the same way. Perhaps not a coincidence that while Georgia's failed to cover in 5 of its last 6 against Kentucky, the under has also hit in 5 of those 6. So it could be as simple as this of low-scoring game. Georgia likes to get in and out, struggling against Kentucky. But keep in mind, where this game normally falls is that week before a bye. It's often the game before the off week that leads into Florida. Last year, it happened to be early in the season, but there was still a bye after that last year, too. Georgia's record going into byes is abysmal. So is that because of when the game is played or who the opponent is? Hard to parse that, but I do put more of that sometimes on Georgia just sort of coasts its way into the final Saturday before a week off. I don't know how much the opponent is actually factored into that. It is interesting to note that the one time over the course of the last 6 years that the over hit in this game and Georgia also covered was 2023, when Georgia won the game 51-13. Did you know that Georgia-Kentucky game was not the week before an off week? Did you get a different version of Georgia against Kentucky because of that? Once again, a little bit difficult to say. I have seen enough, though, of the Dogs against the Wildcats in recent years to say this, no matter when it's played, is just not likely to be a game in which Georgia covers. Plus, I think what you saw in a win against Tennessee and a loss against Alabama, that Georgia's got enough concerns right now that you can't rubber stamp them to cover against anyone. So I'd be shocked if Georgia doesn't win, and I hope it's not all that close, but they're not covering a 20.5-point number. I'll take Kentucky plus the points here. That puts the flow on the side of Big Blue Nation as well. Dar, you would go with the flow and take the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kentucky here. I can't lay that many points with a team that hasn't covered the spread yet this year and a team that's average win margin is by 15 points. I think this number's too big. I agree with Connor that they're both probably going to run the ball in this game. The under's also in play here too.
Yes, so we're off and running here, and you see some agreement between Connor, Dari, me with some of those key thoughts about, listen, there's a lot of backstory between this particular opponent, and some of that I think is meaningful data moving into Saturday. All right, let's step away from that, stay in the SEC with the team, unfortunately, that beat Georgia last week, and what I think is a fascinating game, revenge spot for Alabama as it hosts the Vanderbilt Commodores. Vanderbilt has not won in Tuscaloosa since 1984, but it did in thrilling fashion beat Alabama a year ago. This is also a Vanderbilt team that is red hot to begin this season, undefeated and winning games with margin. Alabama shaking off the week 1 loss to Florida State, obviously seemingly riding the ship by beating Georgia, and taking care of business against unranked foes under Kalen DeBoer. As you see there on your screen, 4-1 against the spread in that spot. Obviously, that's also something that his predecessor, Nick Saban, was historically very good at, too, winning games they were supposed to win. Alabama, though, in this spot, in the revenge position, sees itself as a not all that small 10.5-point favorite. Big game in the SEC where Vandy, for a change, is the one with the better record. Mike Griffith, I love the game. I can't wait to watch it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think Vanderbilt's for real, and even though Alabama's coming home with a lot of momentum, I'm going to play a hunch. I'm going to take the underdog to cover the spread. I don't think they're going to win, but that half a point makes a difference for me, so I'm going to take Vanderbilt.
So Mike on the side of Vandy, Jeff Sintel, what about you?
I think Alabama wins. I think Vandy covers. I think this is a tighter game than most people might think, and I think obviously in the SEC you have a big game up. And then the next week, these are young men, these are young people. Sometimes there's the letdown. I'm betting on the letdown and Vandy this week.
So, Jeff, looking for a letdown here for Alabama, maybe closer than experts think. Connor Riley, what about you?
Anybody know how many points Vanderbilt's defense gave up last week against the mighty Utah State Aggies?
30-something, right?
Yeah, they gave up 35 points. This is a game Alabama knows they need after what happened last year. And look, Jeff and Mike laid out the case where it seems so easy to take Vanderbilt, and because that's the case, give me the Crimson Tide this week to cover the 10.5.
So Connor going opposite Mike and Jeff, putting Kaylee in the position of having to decide which of these phrases she wants to jump into.
I think this game goes one of two ways. There's no in between. Either Vanderbilt wins or it's a complete Alabama blowout. I think that this game being at home definitely gives Alabama some points on that end. So I came in pretty confident, ready to pick Alabama, and I'm going to stick with that because this is a big revenge game. Having this game at home means a lot, and at this point, Vanderbilt's not sneaking up on anybody. I do think that they're really talented, but Alabama's got some momentum. This game is at home, so I like Alabama here.
So I'm also going to join Kaylee and pick Alabama, but I'm going to do so by saying this. Connor mentioned giving up points last week against Utah State, I believe, giving up points last week to Utah State. The fact of the matter, though, is this is a Vanderbilt team that's 5-0 this season, and they've won every game by at least 20 points, including back-to-back road games. What we think of as very tough stadiums, Lane Stadium in Blacksburg, Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia, and yet Vandy is not playing close games this year, winning everything this season by 3 touchdowns or more. They got like 1 million seniors. Also, here's a number that not every trend is meaningful. I believe this trend is. Vandy has covered 6 straight road games in the SEC. They've gone into somebody else's stadium and kept it closer than experts thought, now 6 games in a row. I find that to be meaningful. But in this particular position, if you're telling me they now go to Alabama and are within 1 score, having a chance to win, now you're telling me that Vanderbilt is not only much improved, but they're essentially one of the better teams in the SEC. And I can't quite get involved in that. Diego Pavia is fun. Vandy clearly is improved. Clark Lee is doing unquestionably an amazing coaching job here. But if you're in Tuscaloosa with a chance to win, typically speaking, that puts you in the upper tier of the SEC. That's not where I think Vanderbilt is. You have the revenge factor, which I do think Alabama probably takes seriously here. I like Alabama to cover the number, 10.5 points. I will take the Crimson Tide. Dory, that puts the flow on the side of Alabama as well. You want to go with the flow and take the Tide.
I mean, I would love nothing more than to see Alabama sweat in this game. I just think it's highly unlikely. I think Alabama's eyes are wide open coming into this. I think they're going to build off the momentum of the confidence they had with that first half offensive domination that they did throwing the ball. I think that continues in here. And if you look at where they set this line at 10.5, I think that's a kind of a telling where they put it. And I think they're showing that the value is on the side of Alabama here. So I like Alabama. I'm not going to sweat this too much as much as I would love to see a sweat type game and it come down to a field goal. I think Alabama is just going to win this pretty comfortably.
I think it's a fun game. I think it's great for this week. I wish it was an Alabama awful win against Georgia, but I think it's a fun game nonetheless. And Vanderbilt is, I think, a story that you have to notice and pay attention to here right now. Before we make more picks, let me also remind you that everything we're doing here today, you just heard the voice of Dari Pero. It's all brought to you by R.S. Andrews. And I got to tell you, I've got to pull over on today. There's a little bit of a nip in the air, not quite cold, but it's breezier. You can feel a little bit of fall here right now. Oftentimes, this is a false positive when it comes to our life here in the South and in Georgia, but it is a reminder that at some point in time, cold weather will be here. And if you're like me, you're hot natured, think about your, heating system very much, maybe, but one of these days you're going to try to flip it on because it is cold and it's not going to work. So before you move into the winter, get some peace of mind related to your heating system with our friends at R.S. Andrews. They can get it tuned up to factory fresh specs, we like to say, and that way, for the people who live in your house, maybe they're more cold-natured than you are. Sometimes that's the case. In my home, I know that's true. So if that's what you're concerned about, you can get that heating system ready to go for the winter that's on its way. It's a great time to do it because if you know your heating system is, let's face it, maybe past its life expectancy, it's going to be time to get a new unit at some point in time. That may be true, but for now, R.S. Andrews maybe they'll tell you how to get some new life out of your old unit. And wouldn't that be a great way to save some money? So please find them online, rsandrews.com. That is rsandrews.com. All right, let's stay in the SEC. Another fascinating game. Two offenses that have really struggled thus far this season, and both in what we would call unexpected fashion. We've seen coaches fired in numerous places thus far this season. If you're taking odds on who the next one might be, it may be Florida coach Billy Napier, but perhaps a chance for a last stand on Saturday as the Florida Gators host the Texas Longhorns. Inverted records here. Texas coming in at 3-1, Florida at 1-3. They've been good though after a bye under Billy Napier, 4-2 against the spread. Texas, on the other hand, is not exactly taking care of business as a favorite, just 1-2 on that number. We're looking so far here this season. So it is Texas going to Florida. Line not particularly large, given the fact that Texas began the season as the nation's number one team, and Florida just looks to be finding a soft spot to land. We'll see Texas on the road as just a 6.5-point favorite. Texas going to the Swamp. Mike Griffith, we come back to you.
Yeah, I think you got two great defenses here, and we saw what happened with last year's Gators coming out of a bye. They turned it around. Not convinced that Texas has got the firepower to blow out Florida like they did last year. A bit of a revenge game. DJ Lagway didn't play. He's had an off week to prepare. I'm gonna stick with the underdog here. I'm gonna go with the Gators in the Swamp to cover the spread.
So Mike looking for a little bit of an underdog there. So that could be interesting. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Not going to stack it with my good friend Mike on that one. I think this will be a rock fight, something like 17-7. I do think Texas and the Longhorns cover that spread. They just got more players, especially on the defensive side, to stymie Lagway.
So Jeff going with the recruiting rankings there on Texas, splitting with Mike. Connor Riley, how about for you?
Yeah, Florida's on my personal do not bet list after, seemingly playing well against LSU and Miami and still finding ways to not come home in each of those games. So give me Texas here. Again, I think they're probably, with Jeff, going to score about 17, maybe 20 points in this game. But I don't know. I think Texas is a better defense than both LSU and Miami. Yeah. So I really wonder what DJ Lagway is going to be able to do. So give me the Longhorns here on the road.
Sometimes the simplest point's the truest. For a Florida team that struggled, the best unit in this game is obviously the Texas defense. I think that's a strong piece of analysis by Connor. Kaylee, we come back to you.
If I was betting this game with my own hard-earned money, I wouldn't. I don't like either of these teams. I don't like spread. I think what I'm going for in this case is just I was able to watch the Florida-Miami game, and I think my exact words when I texted my family group chat was DJ Lagway is so bad that it's not even funny or fun to watch at this point. I wouldn't bet this game, but I'm just going to take the favorite. I'm going to take Texas just based on a talent perspective, but I wouldn't feel great about picking either team in this scenario.
So I almost 100% agree with Kaylee on this, in that if you follow investing, Warren Buffett's rule 1 for investing is don't lose money. Honestly, if you're ever listening to what we say and you go actually bet your real money on some games, I think it's important to know when to be really careful. And I'm telling you right now, if you're dying to bet a game this weekend, my personal advice would be there are far better games to bet with far better edge than this spot with Texas going to Florida. And I'll tell you why here in a moment. Now, I also think there's a way to maybe attack this game, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the fact of the matter is, what we do for a contest and what you do when you put your actual hard money on the line oftentimes are two very different things. Let me give you for instance as to why. If you look at the last 8 times that Texas has been favored by a touchdown or less, which is right there around where this spot is right now. That's the entirety of the 2024 season and the 2023 season. Both of those were playoff years for Texas. In that spot, as a favorite of a touchdown or less, regardless of where the game was played, Texas just 3-5 against the spread with 4 outright losses. So Texas against relatively even competition, something the Longhorns don't play very frequently, but against relatively even competition when they're just one score better on paper, not only are they not covering the spread the majority of those games, they've lost half of them. So you got to be really careful with Texas in this spot. I don't believe they're losing. I sort of assume that it's over for Billy Napier at Florida. I don't know how much that team even wants to rally for him right now, but I don't love the pick. But for the contest, I'll take Texas minus the 6.5. And if you're just dying to bet this game, this is a game I think that's fun to watch. Probably, want to mark to avoid from a betting standpoint. But if you're just dying to bet it, I think there could be a way to attack it. I'll talk about that later on. But for now, give me Texas minus the 6.5 on the road. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Longhorns?
I could have thought you were going to take Florida there. I mean, it kind of felt like a build up to take Florida and kind of.
I just don't trust, but Dari, I just don't trust him. I mean, Texas has not been great in this spot, but what in anything in any way would cause you to recommend Florida? So if it's a different situation, I just don't trust Florida enough to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear you. I mean, for me, this is another sneaky line. I said, it doesn't smell right. Kind of like how the Tennessee line was with Mississippi State last week. I mean, when you look at this, it just doesn't smell right, right? And obviously, there's a reason it's set at this number. Florida's offense is abysmal. Nothing to trust there. They're ranked 113th. Like, they don't throw the ball downfield. I think that's their biggest issue right now with Lagway. But they do have a really good defense. And I think that's why this spread is so short, because Arch hasn't shown anything where he's going to run away with this offense, especially when we're going to face a good defense. I really like the under in this game because I think it's going to be a slow-moving game. But I'll cautiously take Texas here because, like you said, there's nothing that really gives me any confidence that Florida's offense is going to be able to do much in this game.
Also, one thing to be mindful of, and Dari, I know you know this, the bad quarterback play does not always correlate to unders. Short fields on turnovers, pick sixes. Bad quarterback play leads to points sometimes, not always for the right team, but it seems like 2 struggling offenses surefire under. But if you get bad throws from Lagway and Arch Manning, certainly Lagway's had a lot of those this year. Bad quarterback play does not always easily correlate to the under. Just something to keep in mind there on that, as Dari Payro fully well knows. All right, let's stay in the SEC, and I think this is an awesome game. And I do think I have a slightly better read on this than the game we just mentioned. How about Texas A&M hosting Mississippi State? Battle of 2 teams that like to wear their maroon. Certainly Mississippi State already better than expected this season. They're 2-0 against the spread thus far this year as the underdog. They've also already exceeded their season win total for the season and gave Tennessee quite a fight last week, sitting here at 4-1. That's music to the ears of every Bulldogs fan. On the other side, Texas A&M is 4-0. Got the win against Auburn, and not always in the most gorgeous of fashion, and not always necessarily great at Kyle Field, loud stadium that doesn't always quite live up to the hype. It looked like a whiteout game for Penn State sometimes, but nonetheless, the Aggies have the record they wanted to have at this point in time at 4-0 as well. They also see themselves as a pretty big favorite this week against a Mississippi State team that's a lot more lively as a dog this season than anyone could have anticipated. Mike Griffith, we come back to you A&M hosting Mississippi State. Gig 'em against Clang. What do you want to do here?
Yeah, I came in really wanting to take Mississippi State, but I kind of feel like they left it on the field, and I got to think that A&M's going to ride some momentum. So give me A&M to cover that spread.
So Mike on the side of the Aggies, Jeff Sintel, about for you?
Yeah, guys, I was going to wakeboard one big line this week, and I think I'm out of my rope on the Georgia line with Kentucky. Here's what I think. Yeah, it's a good story. Mississippi State is a great story with Cowbell. When you play two teams like this back-to-back in the SEC, Tennessee and now Texas A&M, when you don't really have the personnel to match up for it, that second game's a lot harder. That having been said, I still like Texas A&M in this one.
Connor Riley, how about for you?
Yeah, I've been dead wrong on Mississippi State every time we picked them this year. And, Mike mentions the Tennessee game last week. Tennessee needed 2 defensive touchdowns just to get that game to overtime. I think that this Mississippi State team has figured things out, or with Jeff Levy. And like A&M, I mean, it's more, you score 41 on the road against Notre Dame, but then, and I do believe Auburn has a good defense. You come home and only score 16 the next week. Just very schizo. And because of that 14.5 key number, give me the Bulldogs here on the road to at least keep it closer than that.
Kaylee Mansell, how about for you?
I hate that I have agreed with Connor on every single pick to this point. I wish I could separate myself, but I can't, because I've been high on Texas A&M, but they only won by 6 against Auburn, 1 point against Notre Dame. I don't think that Mississippi State wins this game, but I think that they're decent enough to keep it within that number. So I'm also going to take the underdog. Give me Mississippi State.
So before I make my pick, let me tell you why I think this is an awesome game. By perception, you would think that, oh, this is big bad Texas A&M, one of the macro programs in the SEC, huge following, against one of the league's lesser programs near the bottom in fan support, money, success. That's the perception I think that some would have for this game. But the truth is, since Texas A&M's been in the SEC, their record against Mississippi State's just 7-6. They have 7 wins against 6 losses. They're essentially dead even against each other. And furthermore, folks will remember Mississippi State was ranked number 1 by the College Football Playoff Committee in 2014. They were the first team to ever be ranked number 1 by the committee. Did you know that Texas A&M has not been ranked number 1 in the country since 1939? That the notion that A&M is a better program than Mississippi State is not really backed up by numbers as much as many might think. So there's probably a little orneriness on the side of Mississippi State going into College Station. And both Kaylee and Connor said they've been bad on Mississippi State games this year. The team I've been bad on is Texas A&M. I have been really wrong, wildly so, when it comes to the Aggies. I've been pretty good on Mississippi State, though. And oftentimes, there's just something to be said for selling high. And I want to sell high right now on Mississippi State. It was a big performance for them in Starkville a week ago, and now you've got to go on the road. If you're looking for the most likely letdown spot in the SEC this week, that's what it is. Unlike, say, Alabama that played on the road, now coming back home, this is Mississippi State feeding off the Starkville crowd, now going into College Station. And as our numbers pointed out a moment ago, A&M's home field advantage may be one of the more overrated things in all of college football. But I think this is probably still a tough spot for Mississippi State. And it sounds like the odds makers know that too. So I've been on them and I've won with them, but I'm selling them this week. I'll take the Aggies plus a gigantic number of 14.5. Massive, massive number here. That puts the flow on the side of Gig 'em too. Do you want to go with the flow and take the Aggies?
I'm still like in shock that they're ranked 6th in the country. I just don't see it. When I watch the Aggies play, I'm just not seeing them as a top 6 team in the country. I hear you selling Mississippi State. This kind of feels like a spot to, stop riding that wave. But, Mr. Griffith called this earlier in the season of what he likes with this Bulldog team this year. I'm going to ride with him. I think 2 touchdowns and a hook is enough to get me to bite on it. Maybe they get a turnover or fumble here. I'm still not impressed with Texas A&M's offense on their side of the ball to really push up a big number. So I'll take the Bulldogs to cover 14.5 points.
Let's step outside the SEC now, but stay in the Lone Star State as the Houston Cougars get ready to host the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas Tech, with its what has been reported to be a $50+ million payroll this season, pretty quickly becoming one of the darlings of the Big 12 after a dominant win against Utah. Now getting set to go to, is it Kinnick Stadium? Is the name of the place? No, that's not the name of it. Either way, Houston hosting Texas Tech. Both teams coming in at 4-0. Although in the case of Houston, they had to survive against what is not the world's greatest Oregon State team here right now. They've both been good though. Houston 2-0 as a home team this year against the spread. Texas Tech 3-0 in their last three, coming off of a win. So both these teams in a pretty good spot there on that. Battle of unbeatens in the Lone Star State and in the Big 12. But the spread here sees Texas Tech 11.5-point favorites on the road. Mike Griffith, we come back to you. Texas Tech going to Houston.
Yeah, tough game here, on the road, but Texas Tech is hot, and like you said, you get what you pay for. So I'm gonna take Texas Tech and lay the points against Houston.
So Mike laying some lumber there with Texas Tech. Jeff Sintel, what about for you?
A lot of big numbers this week. This one is one I will stay away from. Give me Houston, the Cougars. It's a battle of unbeatens. Love that payroll for Texas Tech. I just don't think they're used to playing consistently as a national power or a team to watch. I'm going to take those points with Houston at home especially.
So Jeff splits with Mike, takes Houston. Connor, we come back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to join Jeff here. Give me the Cougars at home. Connor Wegman has played in some important games before in his time at Texas A&M, but I also think Houston has an edge at head coach here. I think Willie Fritz is one of the best coaches in college football, and I think that's going to make a difference. Don't know if Houston's exactly going to win this game, but I think they find a way to scheme it up and keep it closer than the 11.5 points.
Yes, Connor said some familiar names. The former Texas A&M quarterback, Connor Wegman, the former Tulane coach who had great success there, and Willie Fritz. So this is a Houston program that's got some names that you recognize. Kaylee Manziel, what do you think?
Yeah, man, the Big 12 is a weird place. And just when you think you know who the best team is, you don't. And right now it looks like Texas Tech might be the best team. Therefore, I'm looking at what happened last year. I'll take the underdog. I don't like Houston to win, but I like them to cover this number at home.
Yeah, I'm on Houston too. You know, a game played in Texas. You think about Texas Hold'em. I want Texas Tech to show me their cards here, in that my typical view of the Big 12 is it is the most balanced of all the Power Four leagues, but that balance has prevented a great team from truly emerging because of the money that the Red Raiders have spent, clearly on defense. They may be the kind of team this year that can buck that trend and be a bit more predictable than the typical top and bottom of the Big 12 have been thus far in this era of college football. But I'm going to need them to show me that first. They had a blowout margins final score against Utah 2 weeks ago. But honestly, for a good bit of the first half, that game was still pretty close, and whatever Texas Tech would be was not apparent, I think, in the early stages of that game. So the idea that you're going to go into someone else's venue, it's not Kinnick Stadium, by the way. That's where Iowa plays. Is it Tedesco? It's some sort of company name now. Either way, but it's an on-campus stadium for Houston. Having to go there for that, typical Big 12 fashion, I think the home underdog getting double-digit points could be live here. I'll take Houston plus the 11.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Cougars as well. Do I want to go with the flow and go against the favored Texas Tech here?
Well, I'm going to go Red Raiders, man. Texas Tech is for real. This team is going to be a playoff team. You know, they've spent the money. They pulled a lot of elite talent to their team from Texas. They got people to flip from Texas. And it's showing. You know, they're a top 10 offense in the nation. They're a top 10 defense in the nation. When they played last time they played Texas Tech, they won 49-28, and they have won their last 6 against Houston, and they have covered every single time in that span. I like Texas Tech to easily cover this. I have no problem laying these points against Houston.
It's also worth pointing out they do have one common opponent here this year too. As we mentioned, Houston struggled to get past Oregon State in overtime. That's a Beavers team that's winless. Texas Tech played Oregon State too and did essentially blow them out. So the one common opponent would certainly favor Texas Tech here, but we'll see how that goes. Interesting game from the Big 12. Now, that's all the picks we have for you on this show, but if you'll check out the Friday edition of Dog Nation Daily and our R.S. Andrews Cooldown at the conclusion of the show, we'll make our pick for the other game involving ranked opponents here this week as the Florida State Seminoles, off a loss to Virginia last Friday night, get ready to host the, at least according to some, the red-hot Miami Hurricanes in a big rivalry in the ACC that could have major college football playoff implications. We'll make our pick for that, and we'll give you our best bets on the Friday edition of Dog Nation Daily and the R.S. Andrews Cooldown at the conclusion of the show. As far as the rest of the action goes, if you're making your own picks and your own bets, best of luck to you on all of that. Of course, don't let your life be left to luck when it comes to your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. Trust R.S. Andrews on all of that, including a plumbing emergency. A football weekend could be ruined if your water heater goes out, but did you know our friends at R.S. Andrews in many cases can replace that water heater for you the same day? So find out more online at rsandrews.com for that. We'll see you Friday for the Miami-Florida State pick and our best bets of the weekend, and next week at this time for Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews.